Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going kind of behind the curtain.
Hmm.
We're looking at what it takes to be a CTO, the
Yeah.
Chief Technology Officer, and specifically, we've got a collection of real interview questions
Wow.
that are used to evaluate candidates for these roles. And
Interesting.
these aren't your basic HR questions like,
Mm.
tell me about a time you overcame a challenge.
Yeah.
These are very
Yeah.
specifically designed to reveal how these folks think strategically
Okay.
and how they actually operate in a tech environment.
Yeah, and how do they approach the very specific challenges of the role?
Exactly.
Because a CTO is more than just a tech person. They have to lead.
Right.
They've got to understand the business. They have to manage budgets.
It's a multifaceted role.
It really is.
And so we're going to try to break down these questions that we've got here. They're sort of categorized into three main buckets:
Okay.
operational, role-specific, and behavioral.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we'll try to touch on all three of those and really sort of like extract, for you, the listener,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're in tech or not. I think there's a lot to be learned here about
Absolutely.
leadership, about how technology shapes organizations.
Strategic thinking. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And what really matters when you're at that sort of,
Yeah.
top level of a tech organization.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious to see how do these questions assess a candidate's financial know-how? Because I know budgets are a big deal.
Yeah. So there are a number of questions actually that really get at budgeting and financial acumen.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, it's critical for any executive role, right?
Absolutely.
But, in a CTO position, you're often dealing with significant budgets.
Lots of expensive toys.
Yeah, exactly. One question that we saw that was interesting was like, walk me through how you would prepare an IT budget. Okay.
Right.
Right. And it's not just about like,
The numbers.
right. It's like, how do you think about it?
Yeah.
And then they also ask, how would you approach reviewing expense requests?
Ah, interesting.
Right. And
Mhm.
and the answers that we like the sample answers
Mhm.
really emphasize a focus on ROI,
Right.
return on investment, alignment with strategic goals,
Yeah.
and also, not just like rubber stamping everything, but
Yeah.
but really like challenging requests
Being critical. Yeah.
to ensure that
Do
they're
they actually add value?
exactly. Do they add value? Are they the right things to be spending money on at this time?
So it's like a deep understanding of the business needs
Yeah,
as well as the tech landscape to
absolutely.
make those calls.
And one of the sample answers that we saw that I thought was interesting was talking about, they were specifically asked about cost cutting.
Oh, okay.
And this candidate said that, one of the first places they would look is outdated, inefficient systems.
That's a good point.
Right. And they were saying like it's not just about the direct cost of maintaining these old systems,
Right.
but it's also the opportunity cost.
Yeah, what else could you be doing with that money?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a very strategic way of thinking about cost cutting.
So moving on from the financial side, what about just making sure that the systems are up and running? What
Yeah.
kind of questions get at that?
So there's this whole other area of questions that are really focused on system performance and reliability.
Right.
And, one question asks specifically, how would you measure system performance?
Mm.
And what are the indicators that something is malfunctioning?
Mm-hmm.
So they really want to get into your head
Yeah.
and like how you think about the health of a system.
What are the vital signs?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, the things that they're looking for in the answers
Mm-hmm.
are an understanding of key metrics like latency,
Latency. Okay.
which is basically how long it takes for a system to respond,
Okay.
error rates,
Makes sense.
uptime,
Uptime.
which is, the percentage of time the system's actually working,
Yeah, so the essentials.
the essentials.
Yeah.
And then they also, one of the things they really want to see is like, what are the red flags?
What are those warning signs? Yeah.
Exactly. And so, a sudden spike in error rates,
Uh-oh.
a significant increase in latency, those are things that would immediately,
Set off the alarm bells.
yeah, exactly.
So I guess that makes sense. The CTO needs to be on top of that
Yeah,
because if the systems are down, the business is down.
exactly. It impacts everything.
Productivity, customer
And
satisfaction.
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So that's like a critical area that they really probe deeply on in these interviews.
Now, I'm guessing cybersecurity is a big one too,
I would think so.
especially these days.
Yeah. So there's a whole set of questions
Okay.
that are focused on security and risk management.
Okay.
And one question asks specifically, How would you minimize the risk of external attacks on the company network?
Yeah, that's the big one these
It's a
days.
constant battle, right?
It's yeah.
And the kinds of things that they're looking for in the answers
I
or
think
a multi-layered approach to security.
yeah.
So, you're thinking about firewalls to keep unauthorized traffic out, intrusion detection systems to flag suspicious activity,
Got it.
regular security audits by independent third parties.
To find those holes before someone else does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the technology, right?
Right.
The best answers also emphasize things like employee training,
Oh, that's so important.
because you can have the best technology in the world,
Yeah.
but if someone clicks on a phishing email and gives away their credentials,
It's all for nothing.
it's all for nothing. So
Yeah.
it's about people, it's about processes,
Right.
it's about technology all working together.
It's a holistic view.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I imagine a CTO also needs to be pretty well versed in the tech needs of the entire organization, not
Yeah.
just the IT department.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are these questions that really get at that understanding of the technological needs of different departments.
Okay.
So, for instance, they might ask something like,
Okay.
what are the software and hardware needs of a marketing department?
Interesting.
Right. And so they want to see, like,
Can you think beyond just your own area?
exactly.
Yeah.
And you step into the shoes of the
Right.
head of marketing and think
What,
about,
what do they need to do their job?
yeah, what are their pain points?
Right.
What are the things that they need to be successful?
Yeah.
And the best answers there talk about things like, CRM software.
Customer relationship management.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Analytics platforms to track marketing campaigns and understand what's working,
Right.
and potentially even high-performance computers
Mhm.
if they're dealing with large data sets or doing
Multimedia stuff, that kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's not just about like,
Throwing the latest gadgets at them.
yeah, it's about understanding how technology can enable
Overflow.
your success.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. So a good CTO acts as a strategic partner to all these departments.
exactly. Not just a service provider.
Right.
Okay. Now, what about like the rules of the road? I imagine there are some questions about policies and governance.
Yeah, for sure. So there are definitely questions
Okay.
that get at, the guides and policies that a CTO would implement.
To make sure everyone's using technology properly.
Exactly. And responsibly.
And responsibly, yeah. That's important.
Right. So, the kinds of policies that come up are things like acceptable use policies,
Okay.
which outline, what's appropriate.
What you can and can't do on the company's network.
Exactly. Data governance guidelines.
Data is so important these days.
It is. How do you manage it? How do you protect it?
Yeah.
And then, of course, disaster recovery plans.
In case something goes wrong.
Exactly. So,
These all sound really important, but not very exciting.
right.
Kind of like the boring but essential stuff.
Yeah, but critical. Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you don't have these things in place,
right.
you're really setting yourself up for potential problems down the road.
You're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So a forward-thinking CTO understands that.
Yeah.
It's not about stifling innovation, but it's about creating a secure and stable environment where innovation can happen.
The foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, like a solid base.
Exactly. Okay. Now, we can't talk about tech these days without talking about the
Yep.
cloud.
The cloud, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And so there are questions that specifically address security and privacy in the cloud.
Yeah, because it's not without its risks.
It's not. Right. So they might ask, what specific measures would you take to ensure data security and privacy in a cloud environment?
What are they looking for there? What are the key things?
So they really want to hear you talking about things like data encryption,
Right.
both in transit and at rest.
So basically scrambling the data so no one can read it unless they have the key.
Exactly.
Secure access control.
Like multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, things like that.
Okay.
And then also choosing cloud providers that adhere to compliance standards.
So you're not just trusting anyone with your data. Right. You're doing your due diligence.
Right, vetting them.
Exactly.
So it's about recognizing that you're leveraging someone else's infrastructure, but you're still responsible for your own data.
Absolutely. You're ultimately accountable.
Right.
Okay. So we've talked about, the technical side, the financial side, but a CTO is also a leader,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right, they're managing teams,
They're managing teams.
dealing with people.
So how do these interview questions get at those people skills?
Yeah, how do you assess that?
So this is where the behavioral questions really come into play.
Okay.
And they'll often ask something like, tell me about a time you had to mediate a conflict within your team.
Conflict resolution, that's a tough one,
It is.
especially in a high-pressure environment like tech.
Yeah. And so what they're really trying to understand
You're
is
approaching.
your approach to conflict,
Mm.
right? And the best answers that we saw
Okay.
emphasize things like active listening.
So really hearing all sides of the story.
Yeah. Creating a space where different perspectives can be shared openly.
Right. So people feel safe to speak their mind.
Exactly. And then facilitating a discussion to find a compromise.
Finding a solution that works for everyone.
Yeah. So it's really about showing that you understand that leadership
Right.
involves more than just,
Dictating orders.
yeah. It's about, being able to bring people together and,
Right.
and navigate those.
Tricky interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah, exactly.
So technical brilliance without the people skills is not going to cut it at that level.
No,
Okay.
not at all. Not at all. Another common question is about professional accomplishments.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So they might ask, what professional accomplishment are you most proud of?
So this is where they get to brag a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because
But it's revealing too, right?
it is. It is.
Yeah.
It reveals what motivates them,
Yeah.
what they value.
Yeah, what they consider a win.
Right.
Right.
So, for instance, one candidate might talk about leading the implementation of a new software architecture that resulted in, huge gains in system efficiency.
Right, a measurable impact.
Exactly. And that shows that they're
Results-oriented.
focused on outcomes.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
not just,
Tinkering around.
yeah. They're thinking about the big picture
Yeah.
and how technology can actually move the needle
Yeah.
for the business.
And I'm sure no project goes off without a hitch.
You're going to hit some roadblocks.
So how do they dig into the candidate's ability to handle those challenging situations?
So, yeah, there are questions that really get at this.
Okay.
They'll often ask for an example of a particularly challenging project,
Right.
the obstacles they faced, and the steps they took to overcome them.
So you can see how they think under pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, a common example might be
Okay.
leading a complex cloud migration
Right.
where there was resistance to change from, various stakeholders.
People don't like change.
No. And there were, significant data migration issues.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. It
Yeah.
can be. And so the key to answering these questions well is to demonstrate clear thinking,
Right.
effective communication with all the stakeholders.
So keeping everyone in the loop.
Exactly. And then a systematic approach to troubleshooting.
Okay.
So it's not just about panicking.
Yeah.
It's about okay, let's break this down, let's figure out what's going on, and let's address it methodically.
So it shows that they can stay calm under fire.
Exactly. And lead the team through it.
And it's not just about the technical chops, it's about communication and leadership as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so challenging projects, stressful times.
Yeah.
How do you motivate a team when things are tough?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So there are questions that are specifically designed to probe
Right.
how a candidate motivates their team during those stressful periods.
All right.
So they might ask, what strategies have you used to keep your team engaged and focused when facing tight deadlines or significant pressure?
What kind of answers are they looking for there?
So the really good answers
Yeah.
will talk about things like clear and consistent communication.
Transparency is key.
Transparency is key.
Right.
Making sure everyone understands the goals.
Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this? What are the challenges we're facing?
Yeah.
Setting achievable short-term milestones.
Breaking it down into manageable chunks.
Exactly. So people can see progress.
Right. I feel like they're accomplishing something.
And then, importantly, celebrating those wins along the way,
Even the small ones.
even the small ones.
Right.
Because it's, it can be a slog,
You can.
especially when you're under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So it's about recognizing people's contributions and letting them know that
Their work is valued.
their work is valued.
Yeah. So it's a combination of like the practical steps, but also the emotional support.
Yeah, for sure. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
What do you think? Like, what are the big takeaways?
So it's pretty clear that being a CTO requires a really interesting mix of skills. You obviously need that deep technical understanding,
Absolutely.
but you also need to be a strong leader,
Yeah.
able to think strategically about the role of technology in the business.
Right.
And of course, be able to build and manage effective teams.
Oh, and on top of all of that, be a continuous learner
Mhm.
because this field is constantly changing.
The learning never stops.
It never stops.
And on that note, there are also a lot of questions that get into really specific operational and situational stuff.
Yeah, like real world scenarios.
Yeah, they want to see how you think on your feet.
Exactly.
So, like, how would you handle this very specific situation?
Yeah, for example, they might ask something like,
Okay.
if you were implementing a new internal communication system, which one would you choose and why?
So it's forcing them to think through the options
Yeah.
and justify their decision.
Yeah. Or they might ask something like, what qualities would you look for when interviewing a lead back-end developer?
So that shows they understand the different roles
Listen.
and what's important for each one.
And how they fit together.
Yeah.
Or they might say,
Okay.
how would you address a sudden decline in a team member's performance?
So now we're getting into the people management side.
Exactly.
How do you handle those tricky situations?
Yeah. What are the key elements of a company internet usage policy?
So making sure everyone's using the internet responsibly.
Exactly. And then, one that I thought was really interesting
Okay.
is they might ask, if you were hired, what are the first things you would assess in our existing internal systems?
So, like, what are your priorities?
Yes.
Where do you start?
Where do you focus your attention?
Exactly. And then there's this whole question of balancing,
Yeah.
the current system efficiency versus researching and implementing new technologies.
Because you can't just chase every shiny new thing,
No, you got to keep the lights on.
but you also have to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
So finding that balance is crucial.
Yeah. And then finally,
There's always a question about staying current.
all right.
So they might ask,
Okay.
what resources do you use to stay informed about the latest technological trends?
What are you reading? What are you listening to? What conferences are you going to?
Right.
Are you engaged with the community?
Yeah. Are you active on social media?
Yeah.
Are you part of professional organizations?
Are you just constantly learning?
It's really about demonstrating that you're not just resting on your laurels.
Right. Complacency is the enemy.
Exactly. You're actively seeking out new knowledge.
Right.
And staying on the cutting edge.
So that's what they're looking for in a strong candidate.
Yeah.
But what about red flags? What are some of the things that would make you think twice?
So some of the red flags,
Yeah.
lack of clarity
Right.
when answering questions.
Especially technical or strategic ones.
Yeah. If you can't articulate your ideas clearly,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
That's a worry. Yeah.
Avoiding questions about teamwork or leadership,
That's a big one.
big one.
You got to be able to work with people.
Yeah. And then I think probably the most obvious one is a lack of awareness of current trends.
Yeah. If you're not keeping up with the industry,
You're already falling behind.
yeah, you're going to be obsolete.
Exactly. So wow, we've really dug into these CTO interview questions.
We have. It's been quite a journey.
It's been fascinating, I think,
Yeah, it's been really revealing.
to see what it really takes to be a CTO.
Yeah, it's not just about being a tech whiz.
No,
It's about so much more.
it's about leadership. It's about strategic thinking.
Communication, yeah.
It's about understanding the business,
The whole package, yeah.
the whole package. So, for you, the listener,
Yeah.
whether you're aspiring to be a CTO or you're working with CTOs,
Or just curious about how technology shapes organizations.
I think there's some really valuable insights here.
Absolutely.
And I think, a final thought to leave you with
That's
is
right.
considering all of these different responsibilities, what do you think is the single most critical skill for a CTO to possess today?
It's a tough question.
It is a tough question. And how would you go about evaluating that skill
Yeah.
in an interview? Is something to ponder.
Definitely. Lots to think about.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
See you next time.